The blood on Willa Parker's hands never seemed to wash away completely, no matter how many times she scrubbed them raw in the basin each night. She stood in the small kitchen of the boarding house in Julian, California, watching the water turn pink as she cleaned the wound on her forearm where her stepfather's belt buckle had caught skin. It was 1882, and she had lived 22 years, believing that pain was her inheritance, passed down like a family heirloom she could never refuse. The mountains surrounding Julian were gold country, and men came from everywhere seeking their fortunes in the earth. Willa's mother had died bringing her into this world, and her father had remarried within a year to a woman named Margaret who brought her own son Thomas into their small household. When Willa's father died in a mining accident 5 years ago, she found herself trapped with two people who viewed her as little more than an unpaid servant. Margaret ran the boarding house with an iron fist, and Thomas had learned cruelty from his mother, the way other boys learn to read. Willa dried her hands carefully, wincing at the fresh bruise blooming purple across her wrist. She had dropped a plate that morning. Nothing more, but Margaret's reaction had been swift and brutal. The words hurt worse than the blow, words that had been repeated so many times they felt like gospel truth. Worthless, stupid. Lucky anyone tolerates you at all. You deserve everything you get. The boarding house door swung open with enough force to rattle the windows. Willa tensed automatically, her body preparing for another confrontation, but the heavy footsteps that crossed the threshold were unfamiliar. She moved to the doorway between the kitchen and the main room, staying in the shadows, as she always did. The man who entered was tall and broad-shouldered, covered in trail dust that spoke of long days in the saddle. His hat was worn but well kept, and when he removed it, Willa saw dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. He carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who knew his place in the world and felt no need to prove it. "Need a room for the week," he said, his voice carrying a slight drawl that marked him as someone from further south. "Name is Nathan Garrett." Margaret appeared from the back room, her face transforming into the false smile she reserved for paying customers. "Of course, Mr. Garrett. We have a fine room on the second floor. $1 a night, meals included." Willa watched as Nathan counted out 7 silver dollars, his movements deliberate and unhurried. His hands were scarred and calloused, the hands of someone who worked hard for his living. When he glanced up suddenly, his eyes met hers across the dim room, and Willa felt something unfamiliar flutter in her chest before she quickly looked away. "That girl will show you to your room," Margaret said, jerking her chin toward Willa. "Girl, get moving!" Willa stepped forward, keeping her eyes down as she had learned to do. She picked up Nathan's saddlebags, trying not to stagger under their weight, and headed toward the stairs. Behind her, she heard his boots on the wooden floor, following at a respectful distance. The room was small but clean, with a window overlooking the main street of Julian. Willa set the saddlebags down carefully and turned to leave, but Nathan's voice stopped her. "You are hurt." It was not a question. Willa automatically tugged her sleeve down to cover the marks on her arm. "I am fine, sir. If you need anything, supper is at 6. She moved toward the door, but he stepped slightly to the side, not blocking her path exactly, but making it clear he wanted her to wait. "What is your name?" "Willa Parker, sir." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Miss Parker, I have been working cattle drives from Texas to Kansas for the past 8 years, and I have seen every kind of injury a person can get. Those marks on your arm did not come from any accident." His voice was gentle but firm, and something in his tone made Willa's carefully constructed walls begin to crack. "Please do not say anything," she whispered urgently. "It will only make things worse." Nathan studied her for a long moment, and Willa could see calculation behind his eyes, as if he was working out a complex problem. Finally, he nodded. "All right, but if you need help, I am in this room." Willa fled before the tears could start, rushing down the stairs and out the back door into the small yard where she hung laundry. She pressed her hands against her face, trying to steady her breathing. No one had ever looked at her the way that cowboy had, like she was a person who mattered, like her pain was something that should not be ignored. The week passed in a strange haze. Nathan Garrett was different from the usual boarders. He said please and thank you when Willa served his meals. He held doors open for her. Once, when Thomas deliberately tripped her as she carried a heavy pot of stew, Nathan caught both her and the pot before disaster struck. His hands were steady and warm, and for just a moment, Willa felt safe. "Watch yourself, boy," Nathan said quietly to Thomas, and there was steel beneath the soft words. Thomas, who was used to terrorizing Willa without consequence, actually backed away. That night, Margaret cornered Willa in the kitchen after the evening dishes were done. "You are making eyes at that cowboy," she hissed, her fingers digging into Willa's shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Thinking you can seduce him into taking you away from here? A man like that would never want something like you. You are damaged goods, girl. Worthless." Willa bit her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to cry, refusing to give Margaret the satisfaction. But later, lying on her thin mattress in the tiny room under the stairs, she could not stop the tears from coming. Margaret was right. No one would ever want her. She was broken, used up, good for nothing but cleaning and cooking and taking whatever punishment came her way. Nathan Garrett extended his stay another week, claiming business in town that kept him busy during the days. Willa did not know what that business was, and she tried not to care. She tried not to notice the way his eyes followed her when she moved through the boarding house, or the way he always positioned himself between her and Thomas when the younger man was around. On a Thursday afternoon, Willa was hanging laundry in the yard when Nathan found her. The sun was bright and hot, typical for Julian in July, and sweat dampened her collar as she worked. "Miss Parker, I wonder if I might speak with you," Nathan said, his hat in his hands. Willa glanced nervously at the house. "I should not, if Margaret sees me talking to you when I should be working." "I have already spoken with Mrs. Margaret," Nathan said. "Told her I needed directions to some of the mining claims in the area. She thinks we are discussing business." Willa hung the last shirt and turned to face him, wiping her damp hands on her apron. "What did you want to speak about, Mr. Garrett?" "Nathan, please. And I wanted to ask you something directly, because I do not believe in talking around subjects that matter." He took a breath, and Willa realized he was actually nervous. "I have been working as a trail boss for the past few years, saving money. I have enough now to buy some land, start my own ranch. I have been looking at property about 10 miles north of here, good grazing land with water rights." Willa did not understand why he was telling her this, but she nodded politely. Nathan continued, his eyes steady on hers. "I am looking for someone to share that life with, someone strong enough to build something from nothing, someone who deserves better than what they have been given." Understanding crashed over Willa like cold water. She took a step back, shaking her head. "Mr. Garrett, I cannot. You do not know me. You do not know what I am. I know you work harder than anyone I have ever seen," Nathan said quietly. "I know you take abuse without complaint. I know you are kind even when kindness has never been shown to you. I know you deserve so much better than this." "No!" The word burst out of Willa with more force than she intended. "No, you are wrong. I am worthless. I am stupid and clumsy, and I break things. Margaret says I am lucky anyone tolerates me at all. I deserve exactly what I have." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Who told you that?" "Everyone. All my life. I killed my mother being born. My father could barely look at me. Margaret and Thomas have been patient with me, giving me a place to live even though I am more trouble than I am worth." "Patient?" Nathan's voice rose slightly. "Willa, they beat you. I have seen the bruises. I have heard the way they speak to you. That is not patience. That is cruelty." Willa wrapped her arms around herself, feeling exposed and raw. "You should not have extended your stay. You should find someone else for your ranch. Someone better. I would only ruin everything." She turned to run back to the house, but Nathan caught her hand gently. His touch was careful, as if she were something precious that might break. I am not asking you to decide right now. I am just asking you to think about it, to consider that maybe, just maybe, everything you have been told about yourself is a lie. Willa pulled her hand away and fled into the house, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, burning the evening bread and spilling water twice. Each mistake brought Margaret's sharp tongue, and once Thomas's hand across her face when she bumped into him in the narrow hallway. That night, lying in the dark, Willa allowed herself to imagine a different life, a small ranch, open sky, maybe a garden of her own. Nathan seemed kind, but surely that would change once he knew her better. Everyone's kindness eventually curdled into contempt. She was marked somehow, cursed to bring out the worst in people. But even as she thought it, doubt crept in. Nathan had seen her at her worst, covered in dishwater and bruises, and he still looked at her like she was worth something. What if he was right? What if everything she believed about herself was wrong? The next morning, Margaret was in a particularly foul mood. A boarder had complained about the quality of breakfast, and she took it out on Willa with vicious efficiency. The broom handle across Willa's back sent her stumbling into the dining room where Nathan was sitting with his coffee. He was on his feet in an instant, positioning himself between Willa and Margaret. "That is enough," he said, and his voice carried an authority that stopped Margaret in her tracks. "How I discipline my stepdaughter is none of your concern." Margaret snapped. "When you assault someone in front of me, it becomes my concern," Nathan replied evenly. "Willa, pack your things. You are leaving with me." "She's not going anywhere." Margaret's face was turning purple with rage. "She owes me for years of room and board. She is nothing but an ungrateful wretch, and she will stay here and work off her debt." Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick fold of bills. He counted out what looked like a substantial sum and laid it on the table. "That should more than cover any debt. Willa, please get your things." Willa stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Years of conditioning screamed at her to obey Margaret, to stay in her place, to accept her punishment. But something else, something small and fragile that had been growing inside her since Nathan arrived, whispered that maybe she could choose differently. "I do not have much to pack," she heard herself say. Margaret lunged forward, but Nathan moved faster, catching the older woman's wrist. "Do not," he said quietly, and something in his expression made Margaret go pale. Willa ran to her tiny room under the stairs and grabbed the few items that belonged to her. 2 dresses, both worn and faded, a brush that had been her mother's, and a small Bible with her mother's name inscribed inside. Everything she owned fit into a single cloth bag. When she emerged, Thomas was standing in the hallway, blocking her path. "You think you are better than us now?" he sneered. "You will come crawling back within a week, and we will not take you." "Good," Willa said, and the word felt like victory. Nathan was waiting by the door, his hand resting casually on the gun at his hip. Willa realized he had been prepared for violence, ready to protect her if necessary. The thought made her throat tight with emotion. They walked out into the bright morning sun, and Willa felt like she was stepping into a different world. Nathan had a horse waiting, a sturdy mare with gentle eyes. He helped Willa mount, then swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. Willa tensed at the contact, but his touch remained careful and respectful. "Where are we going?" she asked as they rode out of Julian. "To see the ranch land I told you about," Nathan said. "I want you to see it before you make any decision. If you decide you do not want to stay, I will take you wherever you want to go. You have my word." They rode north through the mountains, following a winding trail that climbed through pine forests and opened onto meadows dotted with wildflowers. Willa had never been outside of Julian, and the beauty of the landscape made her breath catch. The air smelled clean, like pine sap, and warm earth. After about 2 hours, they crested a hill, and Nathan pulled the horse to a stop. Below them spread a valley with a creek running through it, the water catching the sunlight like scattered diamonds. The land was a mix of meadow and forest, protected by mountains on three sides. "That is it," Nathan said quietly. 200 acres. The man who owned it died last winter, and his widow is selling. I can buy it outright with the money I have saved." Willa stared at the valley, trying to imagine living here, building a life here. It seemed impossible, too good to be real. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "It could be ours," Nathan said, "if you are willing." They rode down into the valley, and Nathan showed her where he planned to build the house, where the barn would go, where they could plant a vegetable garden. He talked about bringing in cattle, maybe some horses. His voice was animated in a way Willa had never heard from him, full of dreams and plans. As the sun climbed toward noon, they stopped by the creek to rest. Nathan unpacked bread and cheese from his saddlebags, and they ate in comfortable silence. Willa found herself relaxing in a way she never had before, the constant tension that usually lived in her shoulders beginning to ease. "Can I ask you something?" Willa said finally. "Anything." "Why me? You could find someone educated, someone refined, someone without—" She gestured vaguely at herself. Nathan was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I grew up in Texas, youngest of 6 brothers. My pa was a hard man, believed in ruling through fear and fists. I watched him break my mother's spirit, bit by bit, until there was nothing left of the woman she had been. She died when I was 16, and I left home the same day. Swore I would never be like him, and I would never stand by and watch someone be broken that way again." He picked up a stone and tossed it into the creek, watching the ripples spread. "I have met a lot of people in my travels, Willa, and I have learned that the strongest people are not the ones who never face hardship. They are the ones who face it every day and still manage to keep some core of themselves intact. You have been beaten down your whole life, told you are worthless, and yet you still show kindness. You still work hard. You still have hope buried somewhere inside you, or you would not have come with me today." Willa felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I am so tired of being afraid all the time." "Then stop," Nathan said gently. "Stay here with me. Help me build this ranch. Let me show you that you deserve good things, that you deserve to be treated with respect and care. I am not asking you to love me right away. I am just asking you to give this a chance, to give yourself a chance." Willa looked at the valley spread out before them, then at Nathan's open, honest face. Terror and hope warred inside her chest. "What if I am too broken? What if I cannot be what you need?" "What if you are exactly what I need?" Nathan countered. "What if we are both exactly what the other needs?" She thought about going back to Julian, finding another position somewhere, living the rest of her life under someone's thumb. Then she thought about waking up in this valley every morning, breathing clean air, building something with her own hands. The choice suddenly seemed obvious. "Yes," Willa said. "Yes, I will stay." Nathan's face broke into a smile that transformed him, making him look younger and more carefree. "You are sure?" "I am terrified," Willa admitted, "but I am sure." They rode into the small town of Banner, about 15 miles from the valley, and Nathan arranged for them to see the minister. Willa realized with a start that he intended for them to marry immediately, and panic seized her. "Wait," she said, catching Nathan's arm outside the church. "Should we not? Is this not too fast?" Nathan stopped, his expression serious. "Willa, I want to be clear about something. If we are going to do this, I want it done properly. I want you to have the legal protection of being my wife. If something happens to me, the ranch would go to you. Your name would be on the deed alongside mine. But if you want to wait, if you need time, I will wait. We can build a second room onto whatever shelter I put up, and I will not pressure you for anything you are not ready to give. Willa realized he was offering her safety, real safety, the kind that came with legal rights and protections. He was also offering her control over how their relationship developed. It was more consideration than anyone had ever shown her. "Let us do it now," she said, and her voice was steady. The minister was a kind-faced man named Reverend Walsh, who asked them no prying questions, simply led them through the ceremony with his wife and the church secretary as witnesses. When Nathan slipped a simple gold band onto Willa's finger, she stared at it in wonder. She had never owned anything so precious. They spent that night in Banner's small hotel, and Nathan was true to his word. He gave Willa the bed and made himself a pallet on the floor, despite her protests. "We have all the time in the world," he said gently. "There is no rush." Willa lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling, the gold ring on her finger feeling strange and wonderful. She was married. She was Willa Garrett now, not Willa Parker. The thought made her feel like a different person, someone who might deserve the good things Nathan kept insisting she was worthy of. Over the next few weeks, they threw themselves into building the ranch. Nathan hired workers from Banner to help construct a house, nothing fancy but solid and weatherproof, with glass windows and a real wood floor. Willa worked alongside them, learning to hammer nails and saw boards. The physical labor was exhausting, but satisfying in a way her work at the boarding house had never been. Nathan was patient with her, teaching her things he knew about ranching and construction, never making her feel stupid when she made mistakes. When she dropped a hammer on her foot and cursed, he simply asked if she was all right and showed her a better way to hold it. When she burned the first meal she cooked in their new house, he ate it without complaint and helped her figure out how the new stove worked. Slowly, carefully, Willa began to believe that this might be real, that she might actually deserve this life. The house was finished by late August, a sturdy four-room structure with a stone fireplace and a wide porch. Nathan had built the kitchen exactly to Willa's specifications, with shelves and a work table positioned where she wanted them. It was the first time anyone had asked her opinion and actually implemented her ideas. They brought in their first cattle in September, 20 head to start. Nathan taught Willa to ride properly, not just sitting behind someone else, but controlling the horse herself. She proved to have a natural talent for it, and Nathan praised her skill with genuine enthusiasm. At night, they sat on the porch and watched the stars come out over the mountains. Nathan told her stories about his years on the trail, and slowly, hesitantly, Willa began to share pieces of her own history. She told him about her father, a quiet man who had worked himself to death in the mines. She told him about her mother, who she had never known, but whose memory haunted her. "Margaret said my mother died cursing me," Willa said one night, her voice barely audible over the creek's murmur. "Said her last words were regret that she had ever conceived me." Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "My mother's last words were to tell me that I was the only one of her sons who had ever really seen her, who had ever treated her like a person instead of a servant. She made me promise not to let the world make me hard. I think about that promise every day." Willa turned to look at him in the moonlight. "You have kept it. You are the kindest man I have ever known. And you are the strongest woman I have ever known," Nathan replied. "I do not believe your mother cursed you, Willa. I think Margaret lied because cruelty was the only language she knew how to speak. Your mother probably died wishing she could have lived to raise you, to protect you from people like Margaret." The thought had never occurred to Willa, and it hit her with the force of revelation. Of course, Margaret had lied. Lying was what cruel people did to maintain control. Why had she never questioned it before? As autumn painted the mountains in shades of gold and red, Willa felt something inside her beginning to shift. The constant fear that had been her companion for so long was fading, replaced by something tentative and fragile, but growing stronger every day. She realized it was happiness. Nathan never pushed her for more than she was ready to give. He slept in one of the bedrooms, while Willa took the other. He never entered her room without knocking. He never touched her without permission. and gradually Willa found herself wanting his touch, leaning into his casual affection, reaching for his hand when they walked together. One evening in October, they were working together to repair a section of fence that the cattle had damaged. The work was frustrating, and Willa was struggling to hold the wire tight while Nathan secured it. She lost her grip, and the wire snapped back, catching Nathan across the cheek and leaving a bloody scratch. Willa dropped everything, horror flooding through her. "Oh God, I am so sorry. I am so clumsy. I should not have—" The old words came flooding back, Margaret's voice in her head telling her how worthless she was. Nathan caught her hands, stopping her spiral. "Willa, look at me. It was an accident. Accidents happen. It does not mean you are clumsy or stupid or any of those things you are thinking right now." "But I hurt you," Willa whispered. "It is a scratch. I have had far worse." Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. "Do you know how many times I have made mistakes while working? How many times I have dropped things or miscalculated or done something that caused problems? Dozens. Hundreds, probably. It doesn't make me worthless. It makes me human." Willa looked up at him, this man who had shown her nothing but patience and kindness, and something broke open inside her chest. "I think I am falling in love with you," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Nathan's expression softened into something that made Willa's breath catch. "Good," he said quietly, "because I fell in love with you the first time I saw you, standing in that boarding house looking like you were ready to bolt at any moment. I looked at you and thought, there is someone worth knowing, someone worth fighting for." He kissed her then, soft and careful, and Willa felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they broke apart, she was crying, but for the first time in her life, they were tears of joy. That night, Willa went to Nathan's room instead of her own. He looked surprised but made space for her immediately, pulling back the quilts. They lay together in the darkness, not speaking, just holding each other. It was the safest Willa had ever felt. Winter came to the mountains with the first snow in November. Nathan had prepared well, with firewood stacked high and the barn insulated against the cold. The cattle had shelter and hay. Inside the house, Willa had put up preserves and dried meat, learning the skills of ranching life from Nathan and from the few neighbors who lived within riding distance. One of those neighbors was an older woman named Sarah Chin, whose family ran a successful horse ranch 5 miles to the east. Sarah took an immediate liking to Willa and began stopping by regularly to share knowledge and gossip. She was the first real friend Willa had ever had. "That husband of yours is a good man," Sarah said one afternoon as she taught Willa to knit. "My Henry was the same way, saw me as a person instead of just a possession. We have been married 35 years now, and I thank God for him every day." Willa focused on her stitches, trying to get them even. "Did you ever feel like you did not deserve it? The happiness?" Sarah looked at her shrewdly. "Someone did a number on you, did they not? Made you think you were worth less than dust?" Willa nodded, not trusting her voice. "Listen to me, girl," Sarah said firmly. "Some people are poisonous. They make you sick just by being around them. They get inside your head and twist everything until you cannot see straight. But that does not make what they said true. You understand? Their poison came from them, not from anything wrong with you. How do you get rid of it? The poison?" Sarah smiled. "Time and love. You replace the bad voices with good ones. Eventually, the good ones get louder." As winter deepened, Willa found that Sarah was right. The more time she spent with Nathan, the more his voice drowned out Margaret's. When she made a mistake, Nathan's patient corrections replaced Margaret's vicious criticisms. When she succeeded at something, Nathan's pride and praise replaced years of being told she could do nothing right. Christmas arrived, and Nathan surprised Willa with a gift, a beautiful bay mare, gentle and well-trained. "I thought you might want your own horse," he said, looking almost shy, "since you have gotten so good at riding." Willa was speechless. The mare was the most valuable thing anyone had ever given her. "I do not have anything for you," she said, feeling inadequate. Nathan pulled her close. You gave me yourself. That is worth more than anything I could buy. They spent Christmas Day with Sarah and Henry Chen, eating too much food and laughing at Henry's stories about the early days of California. It was the best Christmas Willa had ever experienced, full of warmth and friendship and belonging. New Year came and went, and 1883 arrived with deep snow and bitter cold. The cattle huddled in their shelter, and Nathan spent long hours making sure they had food and water. Willa kept the house warm and cooked hearty meals to sustain them through the demanding work. One night, a blizzard moved in with frightening speed. Nathan had been out checking on the cattle and did not return when expected. Willa tried not to panic, but as the hours stretched and the wind howled, fear crept in. She paced the house, peering out into the whiteout conditions, seeing nothing. When Nathan finally stumbled through the door, covered in snow and shaking with cold, Willa nearly collapsed with relief. She helped him out of his frozen clothes and wrapped him in blankets, heating water for him to drink. He had gotten turned around in the storm and nearly lost his way back to the house. I thought I lost you, Willa said, her voice breaking as she held him close. I thought you were going to die out there, and I would be alone again. Nathan's arms tightened around her. I will always find my way back to you. Always. Later, when he had warmed up and the immediate danger had passed, Nathan said quietly, When I was out there in the snow, not sure which direction to go, all I could think about was getting back to you. You have become the center of my whole world, Willa. I know I told you before that I loved you, but I do not think you understand how much. You are everything to me. Willa kissed him, pouring all her fear and relief and love into it. That night they became truly husband and wife in every sense, and Willa discovered that intimacy could be tender and beautiful, nothing like the violence she had always assumed it would involve. Spring came late to the mountains, but when it arrived, it brought an explosion of life. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows, and the creek swelled with snowmelt. 3 of the cows gave birth, bringing the herd up to 23. Nathan and Willa worked from dawn to dusk, mending fences, tending the animals, planting the garden that would feed them through the next winter. In April, Willa realized she was pregnant. The knowledge filled her with conflicting emotions. Joy, because this was Nathan's child, created from love and tenderness. Fear, because her own birth had killed her mother, and Margaret's voice still whispered that Willa destroyed everything she touched. When she told Nathan, he swung her up in his arms, spinning her around with pure delight. Then he saw her face and set her down carefully. What is wrong? Are you not happy? My mother died having me, Willa said, the words rushing out. What if I die? What if the baby dies? What if I am a terrible mother like Margaret was to me? Nathan cupped her face in his hands. First, your mother's death was not your fault. Women die in childbirth sometimes, and it is a tragedy, but it is not the baby's fault. Second, we are going to do everything possible to keep you safe. Sarah will help us find a good midwife. And third, you could never be like Margaret because you know what that cruelty feels like. You will spend every day making sure your child never has to feel that way. Willa leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty. I am scared. I know, I am scared too. But we will face it together. True to his word, Nathan immediately began making preparations. He rode to Banner and arranged for a doctor to come stay with them when Willa's time drew near. Sarah recommended a midwife named Mrs. Fletcher who had delivered half the babies in the region. Nathan built a new, larger bed for their room and made sure they had all the supplies they might need. As Willa's belly grew through the summer and fall, she found herself marveling at Nathan's constant attention and care. He insisted she rest when she grew tired. He took over the heavier chores without complaint. He talked to the baby through Willa's skin, telling their unborn child about the ranch and the mountains and the life they would share. You are going to love it here, Nathan would say, his hand spread across Willa's stomach. Your mama and I have made such a beautiful home for you. and we are going to teach you everything: how to ride, how to care for the animals, how to be kind and strong. Willa would watch him during these moments, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. This man, this incredible man, had taken someone broken and shown her she deserved to be whole. He had replaced her legacy of pain with a legacy of love. In late November, as the first snow began to fall, Willa went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when she thought she might die, like her mother had. But Nathan never left her side, holding her hand, encouraging her, telling her how strong she was. Mrs. Fletcher was calm and competent, guiding Willa through each contraction. After 14 hours, Willa gave birth to a son. Nathan cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as he held his child for the first time. The baby had dark hair like his father and lungs that announced his displeasure at being born into the cold world. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered, placing the baby in Willa's arms. "You are amazing. You did so well." Willa looked down at her son's red, angry face and felt love slam into her with physical force. This tiny person was hers to protect, to nurture, to love. She would make sure he never felt worthless or unwanted. She would make sure he knew every day that he was precious. They named him Noah Henry Garrett, after Nathan's middle name and their friend Henry Chen. Noah was a colicky baby who cried more than he slept those first few weeks, but Nathan walked the floor with him at night, singing old cowboy songs in his rough voice until the baby settled. Willa nursed Noah and marveled at how something so small could be so demanding and yet so completely wonderful. Winter passed in a blur of sleepless nights and constant vigilance over their new son. Sarah Chen was a frequent visitor, bringing food and advice and hands, willing to hold the baby so Willa could sleep. Henry taught Nathan how to balance ranch work with fatherhood, sharing wisdom from raising his own 4 children. By the time spring arrived again, Noah was sleeping through most nights and beginning to smile. Willa would sit on the porch with him in the mornings, showing him the mountains and the meadows, telling him about the ranch that would one day be his. "Your father built this for us," she would tell him. "He took a broken woman and showed her she deserved only good. And now we are going to make sure you grow up knowing that love is not supposed to hurt. Love is supposed to lift you up and make you stronger." One afternoon in May, a rider came up the trail to the ranch. Willa was in the garden, planting beans, while Noah napped in a basket in the shade. Nathan was in the barn, so Willa stood to greet the visitor, shading her eyes against the sun. Her blood went cold when she recognized Thomas, her stepbrother. He looked worse than she remembered, thinner and meaner, with a desperate edge to him. "Well, well," Thomas drawled, dismounting. "Look at you playing house. Margaret said you would come crawling back, but looks like you found yourself a fool willing to take you in." Willa stood her ground, though her heart was pounding. "You need to leave, Thomas, now." "Or what? You will call your cowboy husband to save you?" Thomas sneered. "I came to tell you that Margaret is dead. Died in February. House burned down around her." Willa felt no grief, only a distant sort of numbness. "I am sorry to hear that." "No, you are not, but here is the thing. That house was all we had, and now I have got nothing. I figure you owe me something for all those years we kept you fed and clothed." "I owe you nothing," Willa said firmly. "Nathan paid more than enough to cover any imagined debt. Now leave." Thomas's expression turned ugly. "You always were an ungrateful witch. Maybe I should teach you some manners, the way I used to." He took a step toward her, but Nathan's voice cut across the yard like a whip. "Take one more step toward my wife and you will regret it." Thomas spun to find Nathan standing behind him, having come out of the barn silently. Nathan's hand rested on his gun, and his face was harder than Willa had ever seen it. "This does not concern you," Thomas blustered. "Everything concerning Willa concerns me, and I heard what you said. You came here to threaten her, to try to get money by intimidation." "That ends now." Nathan's voice was deadly calm. "You have 2 choices. You can ride out of here right now and never come back. or I can take you into Banner and explain to the sheriff how you showed up at my ranch making threats. Your choice." Thomas looked between Nathan and Willa, calculation in his eyes. He must have seen something in Nathan's face that convinced him, because he backed toward his horse. "This is not over." "Yes, it is," Nathan said. "If I see you on my land again, I will shoot you for trespassing. And if I hear you have been bothering Willa in any way, I will hunt you down and make you sorry. Do we understand each other?" Thomas mounted his horse and rode off without another word. When he was out of sight, Willa's legs gave out, and she sank to the ground. Nathan was beside her in an instant, holding her. "He cannot hurt you anymore," Nathan said firmly. "I will not let him." "Margaret is dead," Willa whispered. "How do you feel about that?" Willa searched herself for grief and found only relief. "Like a door just closed on part of my life. Like I can finally let go of it completely." Nathan held her for a long time, and when Noah woke and started to cry, they both went to him together. Willa picked up her son, holding him close, and realized that Thomas had been right about one thing. This was her family now, Nathan and Noah. This ranch, these mountains, this life they had built together. Everything else was just ghosts. Summer brought prosperity to the ranch. The garden flourished under Willa's care, producing more vegetables than they could eat. Nathan bought 10 more head of cattle, bringing their herd up to a respectable size. Noah grew fat and happy, discovering his hands and his voice, filling the house with babbling laughter. Willa found herself changed in ways she never expected. She stood taller now, met people's eyes. When she went into Banner for supplies, she chatted with shopkeepers and other women, making friends. She learned to trust her own judgment, to voice her opinions, to take up space in the world. Nathan watched these changes with quiet pride. "You are becoming who you were always meant to be," he told her one night as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "Who is that?" Willa asked. "Someone strong and confident and kind. Someone who knows her worth." In September, they held a party to celebrate Noah's first birthday and the ranch's second anniversary. Sarah and Henry came, along with several other neighboring families. They roasted a pig, and someone brought a fiddle, and they danced in the yard as the stars came out. Willa watched Nathan swing Noah up onto his shoulders, both of them laughing, and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. This man had saved her, not in the way fairy tales depicted, where a prince rescued a helpless maiden. Nathan had saved her by showing her how to save herself. He had believed in her when no one else had, including herself. He had been patient while she learned to trust, to love, to believe she deserved good things, and in saving her, she had saved him too. Nathan told her often that she had given him purpose, had turned his dreams of a ranch into a real home. Together, they had created something beautiful from nothing but determination and love. As the years passed, the ranch continued to grow. They added more land, more cattle. Noah grew into a sturdy little boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determination. When he was 3, Willa gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Luke and Rose. The house felt full of noise and love and chaos, everything Willa had never had as a child. She made sure her children knew they were loved every single day. She praised their efforts, encouraged their dreams, corrected them with patience instead of anger. When they made mistakes, she helped them learn instead of punishing them. Nathan did the same, modeling kindness and respect in everything he did. Noah, in particular, was sensitive to unfairness. When he was 5, he came home from Banner upset because he had seen a man yelling at a woman on the street. "Why was he so mean to her?" Noah asked, his face troubled. Nathan knelt down to his son's level. "Some people were taught that being cruel makes them strong, but it does not. Real strength comes from being kind when you could be cruel, from protecting people instead of hurting them. Do you understand?" Noah nodded solemnly, "Like how you and Mama are strong." "Exactly like that." Willa listened to this exchange from the kitchen, tears in her eyes. This was her revenge on Margaret and Thomas, and everyone who had tried to break her. She had created a family built on love and respect. She had raised children who would never doubt their worth. She had proved that cycles could be broken, that pain did not have to be passed down like an inheritance. When Noah was 8, Luke and Rose were 5, and Willa was pregnant with their 4th child, a traveling photographer came through the area. Nathan insisted they have a family portrait made. They dressed in their best clothes and rode into Banner, where the photographer posed them carefully. Willa looked at the final image when it arrived weeks later and barely recognized herself. The woman in the photograph looked confident and content, surrounded by her family. Her eyes held no fear, only joy. She was wearing a fine dress that Nathan had bought her for Christmas, and her hair was neatly pinned, and she looked like someone who mattered. "That is who you are now," Nathan said, looking over her shoulder at the photograph. "That is who you have always been, underneath all the lies you were told." Willa hung the photograph in the parlor, a testament to how far she had come. Sometimes, when the house was quiet, she would look at it and remember the terrified girl she had been. Then she would look around at the life she had built and feel nothing but gratitude. Their 4th child was another boy, James, born in the winter of 1891. By then, Noah was helping Nathan run the ranch, learning to manage cattle and handle business. Luke showed an interest in horses, spending hours with the animals and displaying a natural gift for training them. Rose was her mother's shadow, learning to cook and garden and manage the household. The ranch was prosperous now, one of the most successful in the region. Nathan had a reputation as a fair dealer and a good neighbor. Willa was known for her kindness and her skill as a healer, having learned herbcraft from Sarah Chen. Their home was a place where people felt welcome, where travelers could find a meal and a bed for the night. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Willa back to the valley where he had first shown her the land. They rode up to the overlook and sat together, looking down at everything they had built. "Do you remember standing here with me that first time?" Nathan asked. "You were so scared, so convinced you did not deserve any of this." "I was an idiot," Willa said with a smile. "No, you were hurt. There is a difference." Nathan pulled her close. "I have been thinking lately about how lucky I am. I went to that boarding house looking for a room, and I found the love of my life instead, the mother of my children, my partner in everything." Willa kissed him, soft and sweet. "I am the lucky one. You showed me what love was supposed to look like. You taught me that I deserved to be treated with respect and kindness. You gave me a life I never imagined possible." "We gave each other that life," Nathan corrected. "This is not something I did for you. This is something we built together." They sat on that hilltop for hours, talking about their children's futures, about their dreams for the ranch, about growing old together. Willa felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. The scared, broken girl she had been was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and her strength. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Willa reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been told her entire life that she deserved only pain, that she was worthless and broken, and lucky anyone tolerated her. Those lies had burrowed deep into her soul, shaping how she saw herself and the world. But then a cowboy with kind eyes had looked at her and seen something different. He had seen potential and strength. He had offered her a choice, a chance at a different life. And when she had been brave enough to take that chance, he had spent every day since proving to her that she deserved only good. Nathan had taught her that love was not control or cruelty. Love was partnership and patience. Love was building something together, supporting each other through hard times, celebrating victories together. Love was choosing each other every day, even when things were difficult. And Willa had learned. She had learned to trust, to believe in herself, to accept kindness without suspicion. She had learned that making mistakes did not make her worthless, that her value was not determined by other people's treatment of her. She had learned that she was strong enough to break cycles, to create something new and beautiful from the ashes of her painful past. Their children grew up in an environment of love and respect, and it showed in everything they did. Noah became a man of integrity, eventually taking over much of the ranch management. Luke's skill with horses earned him a reputation throughout California, and people came from miles around to have him train their animals. Rose married a good man from Banner, a teacher who treated her with the same respect Nathan had always shown Willa. James, the youngest, had his mother's compassion and his father's determination, studying to become a doctor so he could help people. As Willa and Nathan grew older, their love deepened rather than fading. They had weathered droughts and hard winters, the death of beloved friends, the normal struggles of life. Through it all, they had held on to each other, their partnership the foundation that everything else was built on. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. The house was full of grandchildren now, Noah having married and started his own family. Willa moved through the crowd of loved ones, accepting hugs and well wishes, marveling at how rich her life had become. Sarah Chen, now in her 70s but still sharp as a tack, pulled Willa aside. "You remember what I told you all those years ago? About replacing the bad voices with good ones?" Willa nodded. "Look at what you have done," Sarah said, gesturing at the family gathered around them. "You have not just replaced those voices, you have drowned them out completely. You have created a legacy of love that will continue for generations." Margaret and Thomas thought they were breaking you, but all they did was forge you into something stronger than they ever could have imagined. Willa hugged the older woman, blinking back tears. "Thank you for being my friend, for teaching me so much. It was my pleasure, dear girl. My absolute pleasure." That night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Willa and Nathan sat on their porch as they had done countless times over the years. The mountains were dark shapes against the starlit sky, and the sound of the creek was a familiar lullaby. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Willa asked. "If you had chosen a different boarding house, or if I had been too scared to leave with you that day?" "Sometimes," Nathan admitted. "But then I remember that some things are meant to be. I was meant to find you, and you were meant to have this life. We were meant to build this together." Willa leaned her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, a mixture of leather and sage and home. "I love you. I do not think I say it enough, but I love you more than words can express. You saved my life in every way that matters." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "And you saved mine. You gave me a reason to build something permanent, a family to love, a home to come back to. We saved each other, Willa. That is what love does." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life of beauty and purpose. The ranch would continue after they were gone, passed down to their children and grandchildren. But more importantly, the legacy of love and respect they had created would continue, spreading out like ripples in water. Willa thought about the girl she had been, standing in that boarding house kitchen, scrubbing blood off her hands and believing she deserved the pain. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that everything was going to be all right, that a cowboy with kind eyes was coming and he was going to show her a different way, that she was going to learn to love herself, to believe in her own worth, to create a life filled with joy. But she could not go back. All she could do was move forward, cherishing every moment of the beautiful life she had been given. And as she sat there on the porch with Nathan's arm around her, surrounded by the mountains and the stars and the life they had built together, Willa knew with absolute certainty that she had found exactly what she deserved. Not pain, not cruelty, not worthlessness. Only good, only love, only joy. And that made every hard moment, every struggle, every tear worth it, because she had not just survived. She had thrived. She had taken the broken pieces of herself and, with Nathan's help, created something whole and strong and beautiful. The cowboy had showed her she deserved only good, and she had finally completely believed him. As the years continued to pass, The ranch became a place of legend in the area. People spoke of the Garretts with respect and admiration, noting how their children were all successful and kind, how their grandchildren were being raised with the same values. The ranch itself was a model of good management and sustainable practice. When Willa was 50, she started writing down her story. At first, it was just for her children and grandchildren, a way to help them understand where she had come from and how far she had traveled. But as she wrote, she realized it might help others too. Women who were trapped in situations like she had been, who believed they deserved only pain. She wrote about Margaret's cruelty and Thomas's bullying. She wrote about the years of believing she was worthless. And then she wrote about Nathan, about the choice he had offered her, about the patience and love he had shown while she learned to trust. She wrote about building the ranch, about raising her children, about discovering her own strength. Nathan read her manuscript and wept. "You should publish this," he said. "There are so many people who need to hear this story." "Maybe," Willa said, "but for now, it is enough that our family knows. That they understand that no matter what anyone tells them, they deserve only good, that they never have to accept cruelty or abuse, that there is always a choice, even when it seems like there is not." She finished the manuscript on their 30th anniversary, adding a final chapter about the life they had built, the family they had raised, the love that had sustained them through 3 decades. She made copies for each of her children, presenting them at Christmas that year. Noah read his copy in one sitting, then hugged his mother tight. "Thank you for being so brave," he whispered. "Thank you for choosing to leave with Pa. If you had not, none of us would be here." "I thank God for that choice every day," Willa said. "Every single day." Rose read her copy and came to talk to Willa about it. "I never knew it was that bad," she said, tears in her eyes. "I knew you had a hard childhood, but I did not realize how truly awful it was." "I did not want to burden you children with it," Willa said, "but I wanted you to understand that if you ever face cruelty or abuse, you do not have to accept it. There is always a way out, even if it seems impossible. And you deserve to be treated with respect and love. Always." The manuscript eventually did get published, though not until after Willa's death. It became a quiet sensation, passed from hand to hand among women who recognized themselves in Willa's story. It gave hope to those who felt trapped, courage to those who were afraid to leave. It became a testament to the power of love and the possibility of change. But that was all in the future. In the present, Willa and Nathan continued their life together, growing older, but never growing apart. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated births and marriages, mourned the occasional loss. They traveled a bit, taking trips to San Francisco and Los Angeles, marveling at how the world was changing. But they always came back to the ranch, to the mountains and the valley and the life they had built together. It was where they belonged, the place where pain had been transformed into joy, where cruelty had been replaced with love, where two broken people had found each other and become whole. When Nathan was 65, he had a minor heart episode that scared them both. The doctor said he needed to slow down, to let Noah handle more of the ranch work. Nathan grumbled, but complied, and he and Willa found themselves with more time together than they had had in years. They used that time well, taking long walks, sitting on the porch for hours, talking about everything and nothing. They reminisced about the early days of the ranch, about their children's childhoods, about all the years they had shared. They made plans for the future, knowing that their time was growing shorter, but determined to make every moment count. "Do you have any regrets?" Willa asked one evening. Nathan considered the question seriously. "I regret that I did not find you sooner, that you had to suffer for 22 years before I could show you a different way. But I do not regret anything that has happened since then. This life, this family, you, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. I regret that I did not believe in myself sooner," Willa said, "that I let Margaret and Thomas steal so many years from me. But like you, I do not regret anything since. This has been the most beautiful life, Nathan. Thank you for giving it to me. We gave it to each other, Nathan said, as he always did. Never forget that, Willa. You were not a damsel I rescued. You were a partner I found. We built this together, every step of the way. They celebrated their 35th anniversary, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The ranch house was bursting at the seams with family, and the noise and chaos were beautiful. Willa looked around at all these people, all these lives that existed because she had been brave enough to leave that boarding house 35 years ago, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That night, exhausted but happy, Willa and Nathan lay in bed together. Nathan's hair was mostly gray now, and Willa's face was lined with age. But when they looked at each other, they saw the people they had always been, young and full of hope, building a life from nothing but love and determination. I would do it all again, Willa whispered in the darkness. Every hard moment, every struggle, every tear. I would do it all again to end up here with you. Me too, Nathan said, pulling her close. Every single moment. They fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, the way they had for 35 years, and when morning came, they woke up together to face another beautiful day. The ranch continued to thrive under Noah's management, and Willa and Nathan settled into the role of beloved grandparents and great-grandparents. They told stories about the old days, taught the youngest generation about the land and the animals, passed down the values that had sustained their family for decades. When Willa was 70, she stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun set over the mountains as she had done thousands of times before. Nathan was beside her, his hand in hers, and she felt the same peace she had felt for the past 40 years. I was thinking, she said quietly, about that girl in the boarding house, scrubbing blood off her hands and believing she deserved only pain. Sometimes it feels like that was a different person, someone I knew a long time ago but barely remember. That girl is still part of you, Nathan said. She is the foundation everything else was built on. Her strength, her endurance, her refusal to completely give up even when everything seemed hopeless. She deserves to be remembered and honored. Willa nodded slowly. You are right. She survived so that I could thrive. She held on so that I could let go. She believed the lies so that I could eventually learn the truth. And what is the truth? Nathan asked, even though he knew the answer. Willa turned to face him, this man who had shown her a different way, who had loved her through fear and doubt and the slow process of healing. The truth is that I deserved only good, that I always deserved it, even when I could not see it. The truth is that love is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down, that I am worthy of respect and kindness and joy. That is the truth. Nathan smiled and kissed her gently. That is the truth, and I am grateful every day that I got to be the one to help you see it. They stood together on the porch as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The ranch was quiet now. The animals settled for the night, the children and grandchildren gone to their own homes. It was just the two of them, the way it had started, the way it would end. And it was perfect, because they had made her believe she deserved only pain, but the cowboy had shown her she deserved only good. And in the end, good was exactly what she got. A life filled with love and purpose, a family built on respect and kindness, a legacy that would continue for generations. The girl in the boarding house, scrubbing blood off her hands and believing she was worthless, could never have imagined this ending. But the woman standing on the porch, watching the sunset with the love of her life beside her, knew it was exactly the ending she deserved. And that made all the difference.